morning. I'm Diane Smith, and thank you for joining us on this Friday edition of Capitol Report Morning Update. It is June 3rd. We're glad you could be with us. Here's the latest from the state capitol this morning. The pace is picking up in the House and Senate as Wednesday approaches, the last day of the 2011 session. Last night, the House passed an amended HB 6489 requiring DNA testing of persons arrested for the commission of a serious felony. Current law requires DNA samples be taken after a felony conviction. The amended bill requires DNA taken if someone with a previous felony conviction and who has been arrested a second time for a felony. That bill passed by a vote of 127 to 20. It now goes to the Senate. The House passed HB 6525. Now that is a major job creation bill continuing the work of the Majority Leader's Job Growth Roundtable. The bill specifically outlines incentives for job growth in green technology, manufacturing, and innovation. It passed unanimously and was sent to the Senate. The Senate passed SB 1206, which permits the public to record police activity. The bill makes police officers legally liable when they interfere with a person taking photographs or videos of them in the course of doing their duties. It passed by a vote of 22 to 14 and was sent to the House for action. And the Senate also passed several education-related bills on consent. They include SB 1103, which sets up a vigorous planning process for developing a coordinated early childhood education system in the state. It is hoped that the bill will help Connecticut receive federal Race to the Top funding. Also passed on consent in the Senate, SB 927, concerning requirements for early childhood educators, reducing an earlier requirement of 100% of teachers holding a bachelor's degree by the year 2015. With this bill, only 50% of teachers would be required to have BAs, 50% would have to have associate's degrees. And SB 858 passed on consent, which establishes a planning commission for higher education to create a strategic plan for higher education in the state. The commission will serve an oversight role under the governor's Higher Education Consolidation Plan, passed in a budget implementer this week. All three of these bills now go to the House. Governor Malloy made himself available to the media yesterday, and he answered questions about the state employee union concessions and what will happen if that agreement is not ratified.
I am not going to pay people to retire and further burden a pension system which, as of the last Pew analysis, was 42% funded. We're not going to do it. If the agreements which were negotiated in good faith ultimately don't come to fruition, we will begin laying off people on a large scale. As you know, in the Plan B that we presented, and I think a lot of people misunderstood this, the initial number of layoffs would be 4,700, but they would increase dramatically above that once we instituted programmatic cuts, and I think they would reach very deeply, well past people employed 10 years or more. So I'm hopeful that this process will lead to approval of the agreements, but I have made it very clear that we're going to live within the budget, the tax package that we've previously been approved. We're not going to, nor will I ever sign in this budget round additional taxes. I will not agree to an ERIP, and we will begin the process of laying people off in large scale, for which I will not feel responsible. Having done everything in our power to reach agreements with the negotiating team representing my fellow state employees, having engaged in that process through my representatives for over 2 months, having reached agreements which would prevent layoffs this year, next year, the year after, and the year after. If that doesn't happen, we will move forward as I've previously indicated.
Tomorrow afternoon, SEBAC has a 3-hour closed-door session scheduled for the Armory in Hartford, right across the street from here. And as they say on their union website, to get the truth and to have your questions answered. Joining us now to answer a few questions of ours are Larry Dorman, the Public Affairs Coordinator of Council 4 of AFSCME. Thank you for being here, Larry. And Matt O'Connor of CSEA SEIU Local 2001. Thanks again for coming, Matt. Matt, I took those comments by the governor yesterday as a warning shot across the bow to the rank and and file. They better get out there and vote for this. Is that how you took it?
I think it's a reality check for the members of our unions. Certainly very sobering words. I don't think it was a surprise. Perhaps the reference to thousands more than the 4,700 job cuts that the governor had not just threatened, but actually had started the process of carrying out in May might have been a surprise. That puts it somewhere in the neighborhood of 7,000 to 10,000 jobs cut. That's not just significant, that's devastating. It's catastrophic. And certainly that's gotten the attention of not just the members of our unions, but everyone else who's watching this process as it's unfolding.
Larry, what I took from what he said was that there may be some people who are thinking, gee, if we don't pass this, when I say some people, I'm talking about some of the rank and file, might be thinking, if we don't pass this, they'll go back to the bargaining table. Or if we don't pass this, they'll have an ERIP, which the governor used that term. Maybe some people don't know what it means, but it's actually an early retirement incentive program, which would kind of give people a little sweetener if they're getting close to retirement age to decide to walk away. I get the clear impression that, that's what he's saying. Were there people in the rank and file who were thinking that maybe they'll reopen, maybe we'll get something else?
I think Matt hit the nail on the head. His words were sobering. I certainly don't hear a lot of that kind of talk from our members, but clearly there is a lot of misinformation that we need to counter, and we're doing that. We're really in this three-step process of getting information out to our members, making sure they understand every aspect of this tentative agreement. At the same time, we want to dispel some of the lies and myths that are permeating the atmosphere right now, and perhaps one of those myths is that there would be an early retirement or there would be a second round of negotiations.
He made a point of saying that the layoffs could reach up pretty high up and could affect people with as many as 10 years of service. I didn't assume that he took that to be a real benchmark, but that what he was saying was, hey, you senior folks are in jeopardy too, so don't think that you can undermine the agreement and only the last hired are going to be the ones to go.
Well, and again, I think that having outlined for you those first two steps of explaining this in as much detail as we can, dispelling myths, dispelling lies, that will lead to the third step, which obviously is to make sure that every unionized state employee casts an informed ballot. But long before this current governor took office, we said, and we have always said, that layoffs are devastating and, as Matt said, catastrophic. We are trying to keep people employed. We are trying to keep money flowing on Main Street, trying to do our part to get this economy moving forward and to make sure that Connecticut still has a middle class. And we're going to continue that process through the ratification. That's the part we can control, and that's what we're doing.
Matt, Larry said myths and lies. What are some of those?
We've heard a number of distortions. We've heard a lot of incorrect information from members that they've clearly read or been told about what is in this agreement. Now, once we had the agreement itself, the tentative agreement, finalized, reduced to writing Friday, and made it available to our members, that went a long way to begin to counter those lies and those myths, as Larry said. Long before we'd even reached this agreement, there were folks opposed to any sort of agreement that kept state workers in their jobs, that preserved the public services that they provide, that maintained their benefits. And it was an orchestrated effort to see this process fail. Once the framework was reached with the governor's representatives, and now that we have a tentative agreement and the ratification process has just now started, we will have members voting on this agreement in the coming weeks. Those folks who wanted to see it fail have stepped up that effort. And unfortunately,
who would be behind that?
Well, we're not exactly sure. We can look to folks who have criticized state workers, the services they provide, their benefits, like the Yankee Institute, for example, and we can see a lot of what's being perpetuated in emails and leaflets that we've seen circulated that go right back to the organization's website, that go right back to comments that their representatives have made in the press, that go right back to the ad campaign that they were running before the agreement was reached. They were literally paying for airtime, calling on the governor to take away benefits for state workers. So it's not a surprise that they might be involved in some way in attempting to defeat an agreement that keeps folks working and maintains their benefits, which is what we've done.
Larry, one of the things that we've been hearing a lot, and I noticed it on your website, and you were pretty clear on the website, people in the state employee health care plan are not going to be put on Sustanet. They're not going to be put on Medicaid. I just want to let you have an opportunity to flesh that out a little bit.
Right. Well, look, that's one of the myths and distortions that's circulating, and certainly it gained a little bit of traction. But this is nothing. This agreement, this tentative agreement, has nothing to do with the Sustanet proposals that are out there. Any change ever would have to be negotiated with SEBAC leadership to begin with. So, but somehow that has gained a little bit of traction, and we're working very hard to dispel it, because, again, I think that the people who want to see, those who want to see chaos, those who want to see layoffs and destruction of public services, are trying to use the myths about health care within this agreement to thwart members from approving it. So that is one of the areas we're addressing.
One of the things that we talked about the last time you were here has to do with what has been called a value-based health plan, which is really intended to get people to take more control over their health and to meet certain types of benchmarks like
Right.
age-appropriate screenings,
Right.
things like that. Is there some anxiety about that? Are there people who are worried that I'm going to be told I have to do this, I have to do that, and if I don't do it, I'm kicked out of the plan? Or
It's a fair question, Diane. It's called a health enhancement plan. It's a smart way to go about providing, ensuring that we provide health care that's accessible and that does its job, which is to prevent serious illness. The health enhancement plan is simply an overlay over the current state employee plan. It doesn't change benefits. It doesn't change relationships between doctors and patients. We were faced with a stark choice heading into these discussions with the Malloy administration, as many employees are when dealing with their employers. You can agree to or have incredibly high copays and deductibles thrust upon you, which actually doesn't do anything to prevent illness and to treat illness. All it does actually is put more money back in the employer's pocket. Or we can do something innovative to make sure that state employees are taking care of themselves and are aware of the full menu of options that are out there to help them prevent serious illness from happening. So we think it's a smart way to go about providing health care. We think it's an innovative model, and we think it's going to work.
And Matt, we should say that there is an incentive, if you will, to do this, because if you don't, you're not going to get kicked out of your plan, but you might pay more every month for it. If, for instance, you say, I'm not getting my mammogram this year, or I'm not going for the colonoscopy or whatever, you might end up paying more in your premium.
Right. Well, one of the points that we've made as we've met with members in work sites and at chapter meetings all over the state over the past several weeks is that the health enhancement program is actually not one of the concessions in this tentative agreement. And in fact, when you weigh the concessions, which are the economics that come right out of the pockets of the members of our unions versus savings that are produced through efficiencies or transforming government or the relationship between government and its workforce, there's actually more on the savings side. And the health enhancement program fits into that category because, as Larry said, the health benefits for active and state workers aren't changed under this agreement. Only those who choose voluntarily not to participate in the health enhancement program would contribute more. And I think that's an important point, and we've certainly seen that resonate with the members of our unions when we've addressed it. It's raised the comfort level with the health enhancement program itself, and this idea of looking at outcomes and looking at wellness and looking at one's own health and lifestyle as an important part of the whole package.
Larry, before we wrap up, I just want to have you kind of go over the timeline now for how the ratification process goes. We know that the House and Senate closed their session on Wednesday.
Correct.
There's not going to be a vote before that. So what happens? How does this all work?
Absolutely not. As I said, we're in this three-phase campaign right now, and we're going through